G'day, welcome to Shooting the Breeze with Lady Liberty Australia. I am Lady Liberty Australia, or Kate Fantanell, and I have the absolute honour of having a very, very special guest in my studio here in San Antonio, Texas today. It was an unlikely meeting. We met on a bus in Knoxville, Tennessee, heading out to a big range day. And I had the pleasure of sitting next to this gentleman who has just taken me under his wing, shown me so much of the culture here in the United States, in Texas, in relation to the Second Amendment. He is an absolute hero. You might know his name. This is Stephen Willeford. How are you, Stephen?
I'm doing great, and such an honor to be on your show, Kate.
Thank you.
I hope this goes all across Australia and the United States also. I help fight for the rights.
Well, I hope some Australians have heard of you. My husband, when I called him and said, guess who I just met, Stephen Willeford, he couldn't believe it. He knows your story very well. So I will let you tell the story of what happened on that day, November 5, 2017. If you're able to tell Australians what happened, your story, and why you were regarded as one of the heroes of the Second Amendment here in the USA, please indulge us.
So in Sutherland Springs, Texas, we are a very small town. We're under 600 total population, very small. I'm fourth generation on the same piece of property. I grew up on a dairy. And so my great-grandfather would take me around Sutherland Springs and teach me what it was like to be part of a small community. We would take food baskets to the families that were struggling, and he would actually dress up like Santa Claus and deliver toys to less fortunate families in the area. And actually, that's why I'm growing the beard now, is because December's coming up, and I still dress up. I ride my Harley Davidson and all throughout the county, and I deliver toys around Wilson County too. So traditions go deep. And on November 5th, 2017, a madman came into Sutherland Springs, Texas, shooting through the walls and the windows of a 100-year-old church, murdering people because he hated Christians. And my daughter made me aware of what was going on. I ran to my gun safe, and I have a few guns. I used to be a competitive shooter and a shooting coach, and I taught self-defense classes. And I had a safe full of guns. I opened up the safe. I grabbed an AR-15, and I know those are illegal in Australia. But if you're going into a gunfight and you have a choice of a pistol or a rifle, always choose a rifle. I grabbed an AR-15, I grabbed a magazine and a handful of ammunition and loaded it up and ran across the street. I didn't take time to put shoes on. They call me the barefoot defender, and people say, I can't believe that you didn't take time to put shoes on. And I said, I kept hearing shots, and you're lucky I had pants on. The pantsless defender would be a little creepy, but the barefoot defender, I can live with that. I ran across the street. He had on Class 3 body armor and a ballistic bulletproof helmet. And I ran behind a truck. He started firing at me. I ran behind a pickup truck. He hit the truck in front of me, shattered the windshield of the car behind me, hit the house behind me. And I put 6 out of 6 rounds that I fired on him. He was able to get into his vehicle and flee the scene. And I flagged down another Texan in a truck, and we chased him 11.6 miles, and he committed suicide at that point, and I'm okay with that.
Just incredible. So your small town, your small community. I'm from a very small town in South Australia, outback South Australia, of about 150 people. Very tight community. Did you know the people who were in the church that day? Did you lose loved ones? And what was going through your head when you just ran out of the house, no shoes on, you just had to get there to help.
Absolutely, I knew the people in the church. I knew almost all of them. As a matter of fact, like I say, I ride my Harley and deliver toys for the 8 years prior to the shooting. The church is who I ride with and deliver toys with. Uh, and so they're the ones that organize the motorcycle ride around Wilson County and deliver toys to and stuff. So that church, even that church, when I was like 5 years old, my great grandfather would pick me up and hold me up, and I would grab the rope for the bell, and he'd pull me up and down to ring the bell to bring people to worship at that church. So that was my church. That's my family. That's people I cared about. So yes, that's great motivation to get out there. I kept hearing those shots fired. 26 people died and 20 more were wounded, and he was walking around finishing them off at the time. And there's no way I could have stayed at home. I don't think I could have lived with myself if I had not done something to stop it.
And your eldest daughter, Stephanie, she was home at the time and she's the one who first heard the noise. Did you hear any of the gunshots or?
Stephanie was the one that made me aware of the shooting. I was in my bedroom. I was relaxing because I was going to start an on-call. On-call is when I worked for a major metropolitan hospital as a maintenance plumber. And for the next week, I was going to have to carry a pager around with me. And when it goes off, I was going to have to call into work and then be at work. So I chose to stay home actually from church myself that day because I needed the rest and I was going to be working a lot of extra hours. So I was in my room relaxing, and my oldest daughter Stephanie heard the shooting, and she came into my room and said, "Dad, doesn't that sound like gunfire?" And right away I thought it was someone tapping on my window, and I opened my curtains and I didn't see anything. She said, "Come into the kitchen, it sounds louder there." And when I walked out of my bedroom, I realized it was gunfire. And my second daughter, my second to the oldest daughter, my middle child, her and her husband had moved back in the house with us. She was pregnant with my very first grandbaby, and we were building her house ourselves. And so my wife and the second daughter were at the house with her husband building the house 5 miles away, actually on my property. And so they weren't there, and thank God they weren't there. And the oldest daughter told me about the shooting. I opened up a safe, grabbed a magazine, ammunition. I ran out the door, and my oldest daughter followed me out the door. And I truly believe that God, the Holy Spirit was on me because I was thinking more clearly than I ever had in my life. I told her, go back in the house, find a magazine, and load another magazine. Because I only had a few rounds, and I didn't know how many rounds I had at the time. But it turned out I only had 8 rounds that I'd put in the magazine, and I ran across the street. I sent her back in the house to get her to stop following me. I did not want her to follow me over there because he had so many people I cared greatly about, and I didn't need her being a target for the murderer. I wanted her to be safe in the house, so I sent her back in the house. And as I ran across the street, I yelled out, and I don't have a battle cry. I yelled out because I truly believe God called an evil demon out of him. The moment when I yelled, he had just shot Julie Workman. hiding underneath the pews. He shot her through the breast, and then he skipped one off the concrete into her leg. And then he turned the gun to the pew in front of her where her son Chris was, and he shot Chris in the back, instantly paralyzing Chris from the waist down. And then he slung his rifle, and he was pointing his pistol directly at Chris when I yelled out. And Chris thought he was going to shoot him, but when I yelled, he dropped his rifle in the church and came shooting at me with his pistol outside the church.
So you saved his life by yelling out instinctively, or yeah, you don't have a battle cry. You're such a soft-spoken, beautiful man. I can't imagine you being Braveheart rushing in, but something just made you make that noise.
I believe that God called a demon out. I believe that man had a demon in him, and God called the demon out at that moment. I truly believe Chris thought he was going to shoot him. He was looking down the barrel. Excuse me. And what I can say is I truly believe that when God calls out a demon, the demon has to comply immediately. Why would he have dropped his rifle in the church and came out shooting? Why didn't he take the extra 2 seconds to shoot Chris and then shoot his mother and kill them and then come out? I believe that the moment that I called out, I believe God called him out through me. And it even became more evident as we chased him 11.6 miles down the road, and he had, before he started doing this, he had handcuffed his wife to the bed, and she had 2 infants in the house. And he had got in his body armor, grabbed all his guns, and came out. And just before he started shooting in the church, he called his father and said, "My wife needs you." And so his father had run over and unhandcuffed his wife, and they were together. And when we were chasing him down the road, he called and he told them, "I've done something horrible. And I've been shot multiple times and I'm not going to make it." That statement, "I've done something horrible," sticks in my head. I truly believe at that moment that the spirit, the evil demon that was in him, had left him, and he realized what he had done. Otherwise, I can't explain what he was saying. "I've done something horrible." He said, "I've been shot multiple times. I'm not going to make it." And that's when he shot himself.
So when he came, and I apologize, this must be quite triggering or traumatic to go through and talking about this, but I've seen you speak. I got to watch your speech at the Gun Owners of America convention, and it was just so powerful, and that's why I want to tell this story to the Australians. So when this bloke came out the church, he was shooting at you.
He was shooting at me, and he had on body armor. He had on Class 3 body armor, which was enough to stop the bullets when I hit him in the body armor. And he had a ballistic bulletproof helmet like you see the military wearing. I hit him in the chest, the left chest. I hit him in the abdomen. They didn't stop him. Those normally would have stopped him, but the body armor stopped the bullets. He ran for his vehicle, which was sitting in the middle of the street with the driver's side door open and the engine running. He turned to his side to get in, and I put one high in his side, in between the plates, and I put one high in his legs, and he was still able to get into the vehicle. He put 2 shots through the side window at me, and I put one across his forehead right underneath the rim of the helmet. And he accelerated, and he turned, and he was running as fast as he could. He was about 150 yards away. That's 140 meters or so. And I put one through the back windshield, and it shattered the back windshield, and it hit him right at the left shoulder blade. and he topped the hill and he was on the run.
Mm.
It took the police between 5 to 7 minutes longer. They were 5 to 7 minutes behind me. He would
Wow.
have had enough, and that's an eternity, and inside a building with no defenses, with a guy just shooting people.
Mm.
And he had multiple loaded magazines and guns and stuff, and he was bent on killing everybody in the church.
Do you think he was on his way to another church as well? Because I listened to your interview that you did on Stephen Crowder, your very first interview after the incident, and there was some speculation because he had so many weapons in his car that he might have been on some kind of rampage. So you actually saved more lives than anyone can even predict.
There was speculation that he might have been going to another church. Uh, we do know now, now that, hindsight, he actually went to a church before he came to Sutherland Springs. And he went into the church and sat on the back pew. And there were 2 uniformed police officers that went to that church that were going to church, and then they were going to report to duty. And we think he was going to start the shooting there, but probably saw the uniformed officers and thought better of it, decided he would come to Sutherland Springs first. And all this is speculation because we don't know. But he could have very possibly have, if he would not have seen armed resistance, he might possibly have started shooting there and then left that church and waited for the police to go there and started shooting at Sutherland Springs. How do you know what's in a demented mind? There's no way of telling.
So, speaking of demented mind, what gave you the bravery to hear shooting, identify that it's in your neighborhood church, run out of your house without even putting your shoes on, and face this man? Other people might not have had the same courage. I know you're a trained shooter as well. I've had the pleasure of you showing me a few things on your property. But why would you put yourself in harm's way when you have such a beautiful family? I know your wife, Pam, was probably worried sick. Why did you do that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a Christian, and I believe in Christ. I believe the promise that if I believe in Christ and have accepted his free gift, that there is nothing, no man in this world can take my soul. In the Bible it says, don't fear a man that can take your life, but fear the God that created your very soul and take your soul. And if I believe that, and I truly do, then I know that this life is just a small flash in the pan. And I don't care if you lived to 120, 130 years old, it's still a very short time on this earth. And someday you're going to meet your Creator. And I don't want God to ask me why I didn't do what he asked me to do. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's my only goal in this life. And again, I'm looking for the afterlife, and you can live a whole lot more bold if you believe, if you know where you're going when this life is over. And also, excuse me, also, everyone, when you die and you move on from this life, what have you left for your family? What legacy have you left for your family? And even if I had died in that gunfight, I would have left a legacy to let my children and let my grandchildren know what I felt about my community. Who you are in this life, again, someday I will die and my story with me, but it lives on with my children and my grandchildren. How do you want to be remembered in this life? For someone that cowered when tragedy was happening, or someone that rose to the occasion? I want to be known for being a bold Christian.
I think you have certainly achieved that with your just bravery. Like I said, it's unbelievable, really, that you put yourself in harm's way to protect your family. I did want to ask, so in Australia, we cannot use lethal or non-lethal means to protect ourselves if we are under attack. We are told to call the police. We can't even use pepper spray. So what are the laws in Texas? Were you concerned that you might be in trouble for doing what you did, or are you protected because of the Second Amendment? How does that work?
I was protected by the Second Amendment. I was protected for owning an AR-15. I was protected for having a high-capacity magazine, or a standard capacity magazine, as we call them, because an AR-15 was made to be used with a 30-round magazine. So we call it a standard capacity magazine. The left calls it a high-capacity magazine. Texas, out of all the states, are probably the most free states there are. And I know Australia doesn't quite have the understanding of what the United States is, but United States, the way our Constitution was originally written, when we were trying to form a government, our founding fathers, certain states didn't want certain things. And we had the Federalists, which wanted a very strong federal government. And we had the Anti-Federalists, and they all wrote papers of what they wanted. And if you go back and you read the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers, they were arguing whether you should have a country all controlled by one strong federal government, or whether you wanted a united bunch of nations. If you want to look at it that way, we call them states, but each state is kind of a nation of its own here in the United States. So Texas can have certain laws that Louisiana might not have. And so that's what, so we're a constitutional republic. So, and Australia was some sort of a constitutional republic, but y'all have lost your way badly. But the state of Texas is probably one of the most free states there is. And since the founding of Texas, when we were our own country, we've had an attitude of freedom. And so I was never even tried for shooting this guy. And as a matter of fact, the Texas Rangers, which is the top law enforcement in the state of Texas, the Texas Rangers, and y'all have probably all seen Lone Wolf McQuade, the whole Texas Ranger thing, and yes, they are just that cool. But the Texas Rangers took me to Frisco, Texas, and awarded me a gun. They brought me before 1,500 law enforcement officers, and they gave me a Sons of Liberty rifle. And at the time, my rifle was being held for evidence in the case. I did get my rifle back. They gave me my rifle back, and the Texas Rangers came and presented me with my rifle. But they brought me, everybody knows the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones has a hotel in Frisco, Texas that has a practice field for the Dallas Cowboys. They brought me to that hotel, and there were 1,500 police officers, law enforcement officers there, and they awarded me this rifle.
Wow.
And So that's a different attitude. Um, they called me a hero. And so the state of Texas, if you defend yourself, you have total right to do that. There's nobody coming into my house. You know, we have a saying in Texas, that locked door that you just kicked in was for your protection, not mine. You know, if you come into my home intent on doing something evil to my family, then I have full right to defend myself and my family, and even in my own community to run across the street with an AR-15 and defend my community. And again, I've met with our president, Donald Trump, 2 different times. I was brought before the Texas Congress, the Texas Senate, and they did a proclamation proclaiming me as a Texas hero. And they framed it and gave me a copy of the proclamation and honored me. So you should be able to defend yourself, and you should have the tools to be able to defend yourself and your family.
Did you get any negative coverage in the media at the time? Because I've noticed here we've just had a shooting today. We were talking about that before up in Dallas at the detention center there. Was there negative media coverage attacking you, and did other anti-gun groups try to paint this as some way to restrict guns like they tend to do here? What was the media coverage like?
Well, the media is going to be what the media is, and the media, most of the media, for the most part, was really good, because it's hard to, without lying, say that there's anything wrong with what I did. So some media went out there and started trying to make up things. And fortunately, I had a lawyer that called them on it. And honestly, I could have sued them for slander, but I just wanted them to correct what they were saying. I didn't do what I did for fame or for money or anything else. What I did because I loved my community. I didn't shoot him because I hated him even. I shot him because I loved everybody in the church. And I just wanted the truth to get out there, and I really, and so my lawyer handled that, and they printed retractions, and they did retractions on TV when it was necessary, and they got the story right because they had to.
Yeah. You did do an interesting interview with a journalist who came over from France.
Oh, yes.
And he was actually at the Eagles of Death Metal concert in Paris, France, when that shooting occurred. And he came over to investigate the story, and you ended up taking him shooting and then doing the interview. What did you find was interesting about talking to a French journalist who had survived a shooting and hearing your story? Did you convince him?
Well, so I told him, I asked him first if he had ever shot a gun before, and he said no, he had not. And I said, if you want an interview with me, then you'll come to the range with me. And I have my own private shooting range on my property.
Yeah.
And he came over and we shot, and I started him with a very basic 22 and worked him up to 45 and even a 454 Casull, which is a really powerful handgun. And then I started him with a 22 rifle and worked him up to a 30-06, which is another very powerful rifle. And then we sat underneath a shade tree at a picnic table, and we discussed it. And he said, Mr. Willeford, he said, you're not what I expected. And I said, what did you expect, Henri? And Henri said, oh, well, I expected Rambo. I said, you've been watching too many movies. I said, just understand. He said, and I don't even know what this is supposed to mean. He said, my beard was even a happy beard. And I was like, okay, that's must be a French thing. I don't know. uh, and I essentially told him, I said, look, Henri, I said, just remember, the man that loves the most is willing to sacrifice the most. And again, he went on, he said, no one in France would have done what you did. And everybody, the left here in the United States likes to say that the United States was never exceptional, never extraordinary. The left is trying to say that we're a horrible, terrible country. They believe that. And I would say, no, I don't believe that. And I asked Henri, I said, you got shot at and you hid in a women's restroom. He said he did. And I said, does your prime minister, does he have guns around him? He said, yes, he's a very important man. I said, but he has guns all over. I said, has he ever been shot at? He said, no, he has guards all around him with guns. I said, so what you're telling me is you don't have a gun to defend yourself. And he has guns all around to defend himself. He said, well, he's a very important man. He kept saying he's a very important man. And I told Henri, I said, look, your problem is your nation was founded by monarchs. Monarchs that have convinced you their life is more important than yours. You keep saying he's an important man. I would tell you, Henri, my life to my family is more important than Donald Trump's life to my family. If something happened to Donald Trump, and at the time Mike Pence was the vice president, I said, if something happened to Donald Trump, if someone assassinated Donald Trump, it would be tragic. And the whole nation would mourn. And Mike Pence would step up and take his place as president. And my family would mourn, but would not suffer financially for very long, and would mourn for a while, and we would go about our lives. But if something happened to me, my family would mourn for the rest of their life, remembering me. And plus, they would suffer financially because I was not there anymore. I said, my life to my family is more important than Donald Trump's life to my family. I said, your nation has convinced you that your rulers, and they're rulers, they're not elected officials necessarily. I mean, they are, but they've convinced you because you were born a monarchy. They've convinced you that their lives are more important than yours. I said, Donald Trump, for the first time in his life, works for someone. He works for me. I am the American people or his employer. I said, excuse me, my country was formed by throwing off a monarch. We went to battle and we threw off a monarch. And we established a republic. And then we put a Winchester shotgun in the seat of a wagon and a Colt 6-shooter on our side, and we moved west. We had no one to call if something went wrong. We couldn't call 911 if something went wrong. If we were attacked by criminals or natives at the time, we could not call for help. We were independent. That Winchester shotgun and that 6-shooter on the side were what we had to defend ourselves and the people that are with us. And then I told him, I said, it is quite interesting because you think that gun control works, and yet you were attacked with an AK-47. And then on a train in France, a terrorist came on the train with an AK-47 and started shooting people. It was 2 American soldiers, unarmed, that took him down and took him out. Maybe we are exceptional. It's an attitude that we can handle anything. 2 unarmed Americans on a French train full of Frenchmen. Why were the Americans the ones that stood up and took out the bad guy? And honestly, I'm not saying that you as an Australian wouldn't have done the same, but our attitude, and Texas is even more so than the rest of the country. We have an attitude that this country, this state even, was formed by men that stood at the Alamo knowing they were going to lose their life. And the Alamo is only, 2 miles from this spot right here. The birthplace of Texas was 2 miles from where this house is right now. And it's the attitude. They knew they were going to die, but they were going to die for something they cared so greatly about. And they bought time for the army to build in San Jacinto and to be able to be resistance and to be able to win independence for Texas. And I am just so glad to be part of that.
Well, I'm so blessed to be here in Texas and to meet such an incredibly inspiring hero like yourself. And thank you for your kindness and generosity. You've been so warm towards me, having my husband and I out at your property. I did want to ask, were you taught shooting growing up, or how did you learn all the skills that you need to be a defensive shooter and to understand firearms? Have you passed that on to your children as well? Is this just part of the culture here?
Actually, I grew up on a dairy, and when I was 5 years old, my dad gave me my very first .22 rifle. He taught me how to shoot it. He taught me all about safety. He taught me to be aware of what's beyond my target, so that I would not hurt anyone else. And I started shooting coyotes that would be after our livestock. I started shooting rabbits that we ate for dinner. And I enjoyed shooting and marksmanship and shooting tin cans at the time. was the way we learned marksmanship, and my brother and I would set up just, competitions against each other, and I became very good at shooting. When I got to be an adult, I started buying firearms and going to the range, and I shot once with a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force, and he said, you're really good with a gun. He said, have you ever considered competing? And I said, no, I'm not good enough to compete. He said, then you never will be. He said, if you start competition and you start down that road, your skills will get better, and you'll find really quick that you are good enough to be competitive. And he said, you should only be competing against yourself at first anyway, and making yourself better. And he was right. I started competition. I started winning trophies, and really that set me off, and I really started, just absolutely reloading and shooting. I really loved pistol competition. And then when I had my own kids, I started coaching and training kids. And our youth shooting team went on to win 5 national championships for the state of Texas, competing against all other 50 states. Our state, my team, won 5 national championships.
Brilliant.
All 3 of my kids, by the time they were 8 years old, were distinguished experts with a pistol. And a distinguished expert, most adults don't make it to distinguished experts. And all three of both my daughters and my son were all distinguished experts with a pistol.
Wow.
By the time they were 8 years old. That was the most fun thing in the world to do, is to go out to a different range. Not the range that I normally shot at, but take these little girls, these little 8-year-old girls out there with big 45s hanging on their hips and extra magazine on the opposite side, and to go out there and just start shooting. I'd have 10, 15 men standing behind me while these two little girls are just shooting down metal plates and stuff and just running a gun like the adults couldn't do. These two little girls were doing that and just smoking everybody on the range. And everybody just standing there just dumbfounded that was happening, you know. That was so much pleasure for me, you know, to pass it on. And one of my students went on to set women's collegiate national record with a pistol. She got appointed her West Point appointment, which that's our Army Academy here in the United States. West Point is a very prestigious military academy, and they only take the top of the top to be able. Well, they recognized her because she had won 9 junior national championships with a pistol, and West Point wanted her to shoot with them. And so they got her appointed to West Point, where she competed all over the world with a pistol and set women's collegiate national record. She was one of my kids. She was one of my best friend's daughters. She was really good with a gun, and she's now a major in the U.S. military, a logistics major. She married another West Point graduate. And he's also a major, and I told Christopher, you know, your wife can outshoot you. And he laughed at me. He said, I'm an M1 Abram commander of an M1 Abram tank. He said, I don't even really have to be close.
Just press the button. Well, she's had a fantastic teacher. Are you still training? I remember you said you go out to churches and train them with responding to incidents. Is that something you still do?
I go and I train churches active shooter response training to be more aware of something like this. If it were to happen in your church and stuff, what you should do and how to handle a pistol, in a crowd, how to shoot well, how to de-escalate, because that's the most important thing. The firearm is the last thing. It's the last resort. When all else fails, you don't want to go to a gun right away unless it's just life or death. You don't want to go to a gun right away. So we teach de-escalation skills and stuff, and you know how to bring the tone of an argument or disagreement down. But in the end, if you can't de-escalate, and we also tell everyone at a church, yes, go train with a pistol, but it's more likely to be struck by lightning than be in one of these situations. So the other thing we tell people to do is train first aid, CPR, stop the bleed, defibrillator training, get all that training, because if one of the kids out on the playground gashes his arm open, to be able to be a well-rounded sheepdog, we call it sheepdogs, you know, we're the protectors. So you should be able to tie a tourniquet and stop the bleeding. You should be able to if Grandpa has a heart attack on the third row, to be able to rush up there and do CPR and save his life. Because those things, or an accident on the highway in front of you where a car flips over, to be able to rescue the people in the car, that's more important than any of it, is to be able to save a life. Because it's whole lot more likely something like that's going to happen than something like a mass shooting. people think that mass shootings happen all the time. They really don't happen that often. Again, it's a whole lot more likely to get struck by lightning. And they say there's over 1 million cases a year of someone here in the United States that are use a firearm to stop an aggressor.
1 million.
They say that there's more than 1 million cases a year. Barack Obama stopped the FBI from following that. He didn't want those cases, and that's just the ones that were reported.
Yeah.
We're in a really interesting situation where Mexico is our southern border and all the drug cartels and stuff. And, you know, the left likes to say that we're moving guns across the border. No, the drug cartels have full automatic machine guns that we don't have access to. The drug cartels actually have grenade launchers and stuff, you know. And they're trying to run their drugs on this side of the border. And frankly, Donald Trump is doing a great job at blowing up drug cartel boats and stuff, and stopping a lot of that from coming over our border. And we need to secure our borders, and it's really hard with Mexico just on the other side, and their government that is really tied into those drug cartels, and that's been proven time and time over.
One thing, as you just said before, that there is, every time there's a mass shooting in America, it's front page news in the Australian newspapers. It's the first news story. So the incident today in Dallas, that will be top of the hour for the news there. We never hear that a good guy with a gun stops a bad guy with a gun, and that's why I'm so grateful you've told the story today, because Australians, you need to hear this. You're not hearing it from the media we have. What do you think, how can you explain to Australians why it is so important to have the Second Amendment?
Well, what I would say is don't look at one or two shootings and then just make a judgment about that. Let's look at the entirety of who the worst mass shooters in the world are. And I'm going to say that's governments. Look at the Russian Revolution and how many people actually died in the Russian Revolution. Or look at Nazi Germany, or Mao Zedong in China, and the Second Amendment wasn't for personal protection. It was, but the Second Amendment in the United States was to keep a tyrannical government in check. And it works. The first thing that a tyrannical government does is try to register your firearms so that they have a record of who has guns, so that when they're ready, they can knock on your door and go pick up your gun. And that's exactly what happened in the Russian Revolution. They actually told them, look, your permit to be able to own your gun, there's a problem with it, bring it down here, come with your gun and bring it down here. They had people lined up around the corners, waiting in lines to take their guns, and they would take their gun out of their hands and say, go home, your permit's denied. And now they took all their guns away. And then they started murdering people. The government started murdering people. Nazi Germany did the same thing. Mao Zedong. And they say, oh, that'll never happen nowadays. But it happened in Venezuela. And that's just been within the last 15 years or so. They went full on socialism. They picked up all their guns, and now they're running over their civilians with tanks. And here's the deal. Human nature never changes. And that's the difference between them working for us and them being a leader and a dictator. Because once they make you helpless to defend yourself, then they impose their rules on you. And I've heard a lot, and I'm of some of the things and the rights that Australia has been losing. The rights to even speak out against the government. You could be arrested for things. And with the recent death of Charlie Kirk,
Yeah.
here's the danger. Now, I voted for Donald Trump, and I believe Donald Trump has been really good for our country and has done a lot of good things. But him and Pam Bondi have now been talking about making hate speech illegal. I don't agree with that. Because when you start making speech illegal, then that stops the open flow of conversation. And Charlie Kirk said it best when he said, as long as we're talking, then we're discussing ideas. When you stop talking and debating ideas is when civil war occurs. We cannot even let Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, as much as I think they're good for this nation, make free speech illegal in any way. Now, there's consequences for your speech. And we've seen so many people on the internet get fired from their jobs because of their slandering Charlie Kirk and saying that it was a good thing that he got murdered. Well, a company that they work for, if they see that, they have the ability and the right, because they know that people will band together, and if that's what your company thinks, we won't purchase from you. So there's consequences for your speech, but you should have the freedom to say what you want to say. Whether I agree or disagree with you, you should have that freedom. And there's some things that free expression should never be dictated, and you should never go to prison. And from what I heard, and I don't know whether that's true or not, is in some places it's becoming illegal to share your faith and try to convert someone.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that. I cannot believe that. You should be able to show your faith and convert people and try to bring them to your, because honestly, Jesus Christ is the only reason I'm alive. And it's the reason that I am going to spend eternity in heaven. And you can't shut me up. I cannot be silenced on that. Because that's ultimately the only thing that really counts in this world. So freedom of speech and our Second Amendment protects all the rest of our Bill of Rights. In the United States, we have a Bill of Rights, and it starts with the First Amendment, which is freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom to talk about your grievances with the government, freedom to assemble. All those are encompassed in the First Amendment. The Second Amendment is the right to bear arms, the right to own and bear arms, and to freely protect yourselves. And all these amendments, these Bill of Rights, is recognized, not the government granting you these rights. This was actually understood as God-given rights. As a human being, you have rights that God gave you. And the Second Amendment is to be able to defend yourself. And it is not granting those rights. Instead, it is limiting government from infringing upon those rights. And that's what it is. Any right, any right that's granted by government can be taken away. But if they're rights that are granted by God, then government can't take them away. And that's what the Second Amendment and all the Bill of Rights did here in the United States, is these are recognized. And sure, states have different laws for states, but as a United States, the Bill of Rights is the only thing that is absolute in all 50 states, is the Bill of Rights. We, as a United States, all the states have to adhere to the Constitution of the United States. And the Bill of Rights is understood, and it's a supreme law. And that's what we're fighting for in all 50 states, even though some of the states have already started to erode and infringe upon our Second Amendment rights. Gun Owners of America, which I work for, and I'm wearing a Gun Owners of America shirt today. We fight in each individual state. I'm going to be going to Florida soon to be fighting for our rights in Florida. And that's what we do. And they actually talked about in a meeting today, I may be coming to the Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, to defend their rights. Because they aren't a state, but they're part, they're protected by the United States, and they have all the rights and live under the rights of the United States because they are a province or whatever you want to call it, the United States.
Did you think you would be doing this at your age?
Oh, I had no clue. I honestly, I thought that I was going to retire as a plumber, as a maintenance plumber, and I don't see retirement in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be fighting for our rights until I breathe my last breath.
Yeah.
And why? Because I'm an old man. Why would I be so animate about fighting for my rights? I'm no longer fighting for my rights. I'm fighting for my children's rights, for my grandchildren's rights. I want my kids and my grandchildren to grow up in the same country that I grew up in, with the same freedoms and the same exceptionalism and the same responsibilities. Let's not give our government our responsibilities. Let's be responsible for ourselves. Let's be the men and women to go out there and create, to be free, to have responsibility comes with that freedom. To be good citizens and to do the things that make your country great. I would love to visit Australia someday. I've seen documentaries, I've seen films. It's a beautiful country, and you're losing your country. And at some point, you guys are going to have to stand up and say no more.
I agree. And that's where I get this attitude to fight from. I'm so glad to be here in Texas, where I have my rights that are given from God, not my government. They are recognized here. I'm a legal immigrant and I still have those rights as well. So we need a lot to change in Australia. We do not have the right to protest. During the pandemic, we did not have the right to travel. They closed the border for 2 years. In my state, I couldn't even leave Western Australia to see my family in South Australia for 2.5 years, so we don't have the freedom of movement. We have mandatory gun registration there. There's a new law. This might make you feel quite angry in Western Australia. You cannot teach your child safe firearms handling until they're 12, and the person teaching them must have 5 years experience before they can do that. And this is even on your own property as well, restricted on the number of firearms we can own. I've just been contacted by a farmer whose farm was razed and 2 of his farm guns were seized because they are now banned. This is the kind of stuff going on in Western Australia. That's what I'm fighting for. I'm trying to educate the Aussies back home. So, Stephen, any final advice or words of wisdom? Because there are lots of Australians like myself and my husband Axel who love liberty. We love America, the people, because we believe in your values. There are people in Australia who are looking at our government and just saying, how do we fight this when we have no rights recognised? It's such a hard battle. It's basically legalised corruption now in Australia. What can nice words or inspiring words can you give to Aussies who are struggling at the moment?
Just don't comply.
Very Texan.
But band together and don't comply. I have no other words other than that. And that sounds easy, but I have actually stood on my values on the state capitol when they were trying to ban things. I've gone to my state capitol and I've spoken. I spoke before the U.S. Senate on safe storage laws and stuff, and I will not comply. I will not comply. God-given rights were rights that were given to me, and if you all band together and just, don't come. And I know it sounds real easy coming from me that is fighting to keep from losing my rights. But again, what are you going to leave the next generation? Are your children going to live under the boot of a dictator? And socialism is absolutely one step from communism, and it's really not that different. Are you going to let your children, this is what matters. Is if you're not fighting for, yourself, fight for your country. And you can do mass uncompliance. You can protest, and that may not be legal, but they can't arrest everybody.
Yep.
And that's the deal, is they cannot arrest everyone. We're starting to see a movement in Canada. Canada has been much the same, and now Alberta is saying enough. And Alberta has already started the process to secede from Canada. Alberta is saying we have had enough.
Yep.
And the truck drivers in Canada that absolutely formed big convoys and saying enough. Canada's in trouble now. And I hope the Canadian people continue to either bring their country as a whole back to freedom or tear it down. Break away. And then have, just like Germany was divided after World War II into a communist Germany and then free Germany. And then what happened? Enough people stood in resistance till the wall fell. And that's exactly how you do it. I'm not saying an armed resistance, because y'all have lost that. That can't happen. But a peaceful, non-compliant resistance. Saying, I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Or as we say, yeah, nah. That's how the way to say no in Aussie. Yeah, nah, not going to do it. Well, Stephen, I feel very blessed to be in Texas and to have met you up in Knoxville just randomly. Like I said at the start, you asked to sit next to me because I'm this lone Aussie Sheila on a bus full of Americans going to a scary gun show. And you sat down and you took me under your wing, and you've just been so accommodating to me.
You got
so
to shoot full automatic
I
belt-fed.
I did.
Belt-fed machine guns.
Stephen was pointing out, go and shoot that. That's banned in Australia. Belt-fed machine guns, all the fun stuff, and no one got hurt. It was a very fun day.
Isn't that amazing? So something else. So every year, and you need to come to the gathering.
Okay.
So the gathering is put on by Palmetto State Armory every year. The gathering is a 2-day event. They have 17 ranges, 17 bays for shooting. They average 10,000 rounds per bay per day. So 170,000 rounds of ammunition fired each day for 2 days. And 15,000 people come out and shoot at the gathering every year. 15,000 people come out and they shoot 170,000 rounds each day for 2 days, and no one gets hurt. And it is just so much fun. And that's something you guys may not understand, but wow, you would really enjoy it. Shooting at targets and stuff. It's such a fun sport.
Yes. Well, I'm blessed that my father taught me how to shoot from a young age, and he's like you. He loves his pistols, metallic silhouette shooting. So I have such a close relationship with my dad. I miss him every day. I feel like you're kind of my Texas dad, if I can call you that. I know you've got enough kids and grandkids, but
I'll do that. I've got plenty of room for adopting. I got room in my heart.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Well, thank you so much for being on my show and sharing your story. How are you feeling this far on from it? Is there anything anyone can do to help you? Can we buy your book in Australia? How can we support you for being a hero?
Well, from Australia, I'd love to say go to gunowners.org and sign up as a member for Gun Owners of America. You can at least see what's going on here. You can go on Amazon, and my book is on Amazon. It's a town called Sutherland Springs. It's on Amazon, and please buy my book, read my book. You'll find out more about a little small community that, you'll feel right at home. And if you ever remember the Andy Griffith Show, Sutherland Springs is Mayberry, USA. It's just that kind of town that everybody knows everybody, and you'll get a feel of that. And a town called Sutherland Springs on Amazon. I'd love for you to buy my book.
Thank you for joining me, Stephen, and thank you to everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, share. I will be doing more exciting interviews from my studio here soon with some incredibly inspiring American people fighting for the 2A here in the US. We need to get something happening in Australia, lads. We are losing the fight badly. We need to turn it around. So these stories are to inspire you and to show you that America is not that a scary place. They are beautiful people, and they just defend their family community with the rights that are given from God. Stephen, did you want to say anything else before I sign off?
God bless you all. And get me to Australia. I'd love to go.
Yes.
I'd love to go visit.
We'll get you down there. My dad would love to meet you. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you again soon.